the friends, and I certainly do consider you my friends. Welcome back to the third session of this mastermind series that I'm calling Embracing the Chaos, where we have a dialogue about the things that we need to be thinking about right now during this unprecedented crisis, and how we can all fight to get to the other side and fight in a way that is filled with grace and also some strategy behind it, not just panic. So the two things I'm going to talk about today are, number one, I want to build on an idea that I first presented in the first episode of this series, where we need to take a close look at what is going on with our customers, with consumer behaviors right now, and how we need to reimagine our businesses, reapply our core competencies and skill sets in this new environment. Now, I'm going to take it a step further today because I want to help you start thinking through, not just right now, but a couple months from now, when we get through this thing. How is this going to change? I think I have some very interesting observations for you about that today. The second topic I want to talk about is something, of course, that's very near and dear to my heart, and that's this idea of establishing your personal brand. What is the role of the personal brand in this new world? I think we need to talk about that. We need to re-examine everything, right? All the rules have changed. Now, like last time, I'm so privileged and happy that Dr. I of Classrooms Without Walls is helping me today. I'm not a good multitasker. I want to really concentrate on the messages that I'm bringing to you today, but Dr. I is going to be watching the comment stream, and she's actually going to be curating your comments and summarizing them for me in a text message. That might seem old school, but it works right now, okay? We'll try to keep this to around 30 minutes. I think that's a digestible sort of period. So thanks for listening in. Now, before we get started, I know a lot of people are still coming on. I thought I would just give you a short personal update and pass along quite an uplifting experience I had yesterday. I mentioned on my last episode that I was experiencing a lot of personal discomfort because in the very back of my mouth, a crown had come off of a tooth, a very old crown. It's probably been there for like 25 years, and the tooth was actually like crumbling underneath this crown. So as I was presenting, it was like a knife cutting on my tongue. Well, as it turns out, this is actually a very serious situation because the crown could not be replaced because the tooth was deteriorating, and I needed to have this tooth removed. As you might know, this could present very serious, short-term and long-term health problems, not the least of which is I'm now having an exposed nerve in this tooth, so I'm vulnerable to pain, vulnerable to infection, and I know of at least one person who's actually died from an infected tooth like this. So I was very grateful. I was able to get into an oral surgeon, and they kind of rushed me in yesterday, and I had the tooth extracted yesterday. But here's what I want to pass along. Look, the most vulnerable occupation right now is dentistry because of the close proximity and you're, actually in someone's mouth. But when I got to this office, they were so friendly. They were so positive. And it just was like just what I needed in that moment. And I think the lesson here is that in a crisis like this, when our customers can experience just a little positivity, just a glimpse of hope and caring. The staff was so positive and sort of like joking with each other. They were so relaxed, and it's like, oh my gosh, I never expected a coronavirus oasis at a dental surgeon's office, but it was a great lesson to me, and I hope it's a great lesson for you. So let's get into the main content for today. As I mentioned, I've got two important topics, and then I will answer your questions and respond to your comments with the help of Dr. I. So first of all, I want to emphasize that there is no plan right now. There is no strategy right now. We are in unprecedented times where, we're breaking the rules. We're experiencing something that we've never been through before. So, the first thing I want to talk to you about is whatever I tell you today, you need to approach this through your own lens, through your own experiences. I want you to think critically about things I tell you and what anybody tells you, right? If there's a guru out there telling you this is what you do right now, then I think you need to approach this with caution and critical thinking. I got a laugh from my good friend John Dale Beckley. He posted a comment on the last session, and he said that he disagreed with me, and I couldn't really understand what he was disagreeing with. And then he wrote me a note later, and he said, "Oh, I typed it wrong. I actually agreed with you, but it's okay to disagree." John, I got a good laugh out of that. But it's okay. It really is to question me and question everybody. I think that's really, really important today. I think we also need to give grace to people who are stumbling out there. There is a lot of things going on where people are just tone deaf. They're trying their best. Maybe they're panicked. And, I roll my eyes at a lot of this stuff going on. But I also want to give grace to people and think, look, they're just trying their best, right? Maybe it's a little tone deaf. Maybe it's a little awkward. But let's not be too hard on other people who are trying to survive and find a way to feed their families right now. Why not find ways to encourage them and maybe even pick them up? Now, what I want to talk today about is a very, very important topic that I want you to really give a lot of consideration to. As I mentioned in one of the early episodes, we talked at length about reassessing what is going on in this moment and reimagining our businesses, reapplying our skills and core competencies to be relevant now. So I want to build a little bit on this core idea. I want to tell you a story that'll sort of set up this idea. Many, many years ago, I had invested in Nike stock. I had done some projects where I sort of got an inside look at what was going on at Nike. I was comparing this to different consumer trends, and I was very, very bullish on Nike. And one day, my son, who was like, Nikes were like the hottest clothes and shoes that anybody could wear in high school at that time. And my son came home from school, and he was wearing leather boots. And I said, "What happened to the Nikes?" He said, "Oh, Dad, nobody's wearing Nikes right now. Everybody's moving to leather. This styles are really changing right now." Boom, sold the Nike stock at its peak. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because we have to look not just at the short-term changes, but at long-term changes that are happening now. Now, here's what I want you to think about. In the last episode, we talked about these short-term behavior changes. But if these lockdowns last more than a few weeks, it's not going to be short-term changes. we're going to be seeing long-term shifts in consumer habits. The research shows that if people are in a new situation, habit really doesn't change. But if this new situation lasts for weeks, let's say 6 weeks, 8 weeks, couple of months, we can expect a new normal. All right? This is a very key idea for you and your business, because I think a lot of people are saying, oh, we'll just get through this and things will go back to the same. I think a lot of things are not going to go back to the same. They're not going to go back to what we considered normal everyday business. There's going to be some new normals. So let's talk about some of these transitions, like, going from Nike to leather, right? Which is a longer term thing. Travel sites, the travel business. People are not going to just start jumping back on planes and trains, right? Number one, I think we're going to have a new view of travel. I think people are going to be much more cautious for a period of time. The other thing is, I think if we get through this, we're going to be entering a recession. And by the way, what I'm trying to do is reflect the best expert advice I'm seeing out there, right? I'm trying to see this scientifically. I don't, this is not Mark Schaefer's view of the world. I'm trying to reflect to you today what I see in terms of real mega trends that are going to impact our businesses. And I think the whole idea about travel, there's going to be some permanent changes. If people have less money, we're going to see more driving vacations, more driving travel. There's a lot of implications for that. If you're in that sort of business, travel, family entertainment, the research shows when it's a flying vacation, the parents make the decision. If it's a driving vacation, the kids contribute to the decision, right? So there's a lot of new things going on with new normal. Food. Think about food. If you have anything to do with food and cooking in restaurants, if we're locked in more than a few weeks, and I think that we will, I think we need to, if you look at what the scientists are saying, we're going to have permanent changes to how people connect in terms of food. People are cooking at home. They're rediscovering cooking. They're making it a family activity. This is going to be a habit that switches over and will become part of the new normal. Delivery systems, right? Ways that content are being delivered, ways that food is being delivered. We're going to have a new normal because people are getting used to this. Again, last time I talked about paying attention to short-term behavior changes. Now I want you to be thinking about really thinking through what's happening in our world today that's going to translate to the longer term. What about entertainment? We've got these families cooped up, trying to find ways to entertain themselves. And look, people are already getting bored with Netflix, okay? They're finding new ways to entertain themselves. They're doing new online activities. They're doing activities with their families in remote ways. They're rediscovering board games. This is going to become a long-term thing. What's going to happen when we are suddenly unleashed back into the world after a couple of months of isolation? Let's hope it's not a couple of months, but it might be. What are the kids going to say? Mom and Dad, can we still play that game? Right? There are going to be new permanent habits. So look at what's going on in your particular market and see how is this changing? What are the possible implications for the long term? What about relieving stress? People are doing yoga. They're finding new ways to relieve stress through prayer, through meditation. maybe something like essential oils, right? And maybe these are things that are new. They don't necessarily want to, self-medicate. They can't maybe exercise like they used to, and they're going to look for alternate methods of stress reduction. How does this affect your consumers and customers? I think another important thing that we need to pay attention to is right now everyone's trying to figure out the new normal in terms of working at home. I think that this is going to represent a permanent disruption in many ways for one simple reason. Work at home never really worked before. And here's why. The companies didn't invest in the technology and management processes to make it work. But they have. They have to, right? So for this one simple reason, we're getting good at it. We're figuring this out. So I think work from home is going to be part of the new normal. So if work from home is changing your life, changing how you and your customers and consumers are responding to your businesses, then this is something to think about. It's not going to go back after we're done, all right? So I think this is going to be a very, very important idea. And if you're just joining, I want to remind you that I'm going to be talking here for a few minutes, and then we'll open it up to comments and questions. Dr. I is curating these questions for me, so even though I'm not paying attention to the comment stream right now, I will get to your questions. We'll answer as many as we can. I was sort of, aiming at 30 minutes here, but if we need to go a little longer, I'll certainly do that for you. And as I did last time, if I didn't get to your questions, I try to go through the entire comment stream when this is over. And if you like this, if I'm being helpful to you, please share this with other friends when we're done, right? Because, look, what I'm trying to do is apply my core skills and competencies to help you. And if I can help more people, and that would, that's what I'm trying to do right now in terms of my impact on the world. So, to review, we need to be looking at what might be the new normal. And it's a double whammy, right? Because number one, people are going to be creating new traditions and habits when they're locked in. And those habits are going to transition. The other part of the whammy here is a recession. All right. I think, they did a poll of 34 top economists. And they're basically, I think there's an 88% probability that we're going to be going into recession. New habits, less money, right? How is that going to be transitioning? Are people going to be flocking to airports when this is over? Are they going to be flocking to vacation sites, when this is over? Are they going to be going to conferences? I think there's going to be, important implications for anything that has to do with food, fashion, delivery of services. I think we need to look at coming out of this a new emphasis on value shopping. Now, I know this is hard to think about because it's impossible to plan right now. But what I want you to do is think about three possible scenarios. The best case is, and the economists are basically saying we've got maybe a 12% chance of this, but the best case is we kind of go back to a new normal pretty quickly. The most dramatic scenario, and again, maybe that's 12%, is that we go not just into an extended recession, but maybe a depression, and all these things take hold for a much, much longer period. Then there's a scenario in the middle, which I want you to be thinking about, is that some of the, some of the things that we've planned on for our businesses are going to transition permanently to a new normal on the other side. And I want you to be thinking about some of these things. Quick little anecdote. In the recession in 2008, when people were very, very hard hit, right? We saw some new normals emerge in terms of comforting people, right? Here's what was really selling in the recession: wine, chocolate, cigarettes, those Snuggies, remember, those things? Those things took off in 2008. It's like those blankets you sort of crawl into. Homeware, like sweatpants, really took off 2008. And that created a permanent, long-lasting trend where all of those products and industries sustained those high sales past the crisis period, okay? So one way to look at this is there's huge opportunity here. I don't want this to sound overly depressing. What's good business? What's good marketing? It's recognizing underserved and unmet customer needs. And holy cow, as I said, holy cow, it makes me sound like an old man. And all my international listeners probably have no idea what I'm saying about, so what I'm talking about. But oh my gosh, unmet and underserved customer needs. Oh my gosh, there's so many. There's so many. So let's be thinking out of the box. Let's start brainstorming. And let's also be thinking about, if we have a business that we cannot easily transition, what are we going to do to reinvigorate demand? Okay? If you're in the conference business and that's your core thing, and you're listening to me today, and you're thinking, oh boy, Mark could be right about this. Double whammy. New normal, less money. What does that mean for conferences? Okay. How are you going to reinvigorate demand? How are you going to get back on people's radar screens? Radar screens. Oh, that's the tooth that hurts. So maybe our marketing on the other side is to wake people up from their old routines and get them back into a new routine, all right? We don't want these things to become permanent. Another way to look at this, all right? Now, let's get into the second topic for today. And again, I want to encourage you to leave your questions and comments in the comments section. Dr. I is going to be looking at that, curating that, and sending those to me so I know what questions to ask and I don't have to spend my time rolling through this comment section. So I want to talk about the role of the personal brand in this situation that we're in. I got a message from my dear friend Christopher Penn. Many of you know Christopher, you follow Christopher, and let me just put in a plug for my friend. Christopher is an expert in business analytics and data science, and he has been viewing this whole coronavirus crisis in a very scientific way, really trying to discern what is the truth. And let me tell you something, he's been writing a lot about this. He's been very generous in offering his views on his Facebook page. And I gotta tell you something, everything he's been saying has been coming true. So he's been an amazing resource for me. And here's the message that he sent to me yesterday. Mark, it's time for me to dust off your book, Known. Unemployment is projected to hit 11%, which is where it was in 1982, which was a bad boy sort of recession, right? Lots of folks will be needing your help figuring out how to find new jobs. Now, let me give you an example of how not working on your personal brand is hurting people today. I'm getting all these pitches on LinkedIn. I'm sure you are too. And this guy wrote me this, he's pitching me on some course he's created. Now, a lot of people are reacting to this situation by saying, people can't come to my conference, people can't come to my event. I'll do it online. I'll do a course. I'll sell this course, right? Here's the problem. They're putting the cart before the horse. Or, more accurately, they're putting the course before the horse. So what is the horse? People are not going to buy your course unless they know who you are. Do you recognize how many courses there are out there? They're not going to buy anything from you unless they know you. And this is what I've been urging you to be thinking about for the last couple of years, that the only sustainable competitive advantage you have now and forever is your personal brand. If you are known and your competitors aren't, you will win. Now, what if I get this message from someone who I know, who I trust, even if I don't know the person, I've followed their content and I've created this emotional connection to them. And they said, oh, Mark, just created this new course. I'm thinking, yeah, sure. Of course I'm going to take a serious look at this. So here is what I want to beg you to do. I'm begging you to do this. I am not a self-promotional person. I am not here to sell you something today or in any of these episodes that I'm creating for you. But let me tell you something. The book that I wrote called Known and the workbook that goes with it, it has helped thousands of people. I'm not a bragging person, but I nailed it. This is how you build your personal brand. I worked on this book for 2 years. This is it. There are no exceptions. So it's not too late. And if you have time on your hands right now, this is an imperative. I started off the show by saying, I don't tell you what to do. And I respect you. I respect your world and your area of expertise. But I really think this applies to anybody in business today. Now more than ever, the personal brand is the brand. It is the brand of the company, right? Especially if you're selling any kind of personal services. You've got to be known. You have to. There's no alternative. And if my heart goes out to people right now who are trying to sell something without working on the personal brand, creating all this content, creating all these courses. It's not going to hit with people unless they trust you, unless they know you in a different way from this process that I've outlined in Known, right? It took me 2 years to figure this out. And let me tell you something. I get a message from somebody every single week saying, this book changed my life. There is no exception. It works. And I've been in business, since 1982. I know I don't look it. But as I look back at my career, if I had to point out to the one thing that's helped people the most in my whole life, it's that book. So, I'm not telling you what to do. I really don't want to come across as salesy. I'm just begging you. I'm begging you. Work on your personal brand. Start now and get aggressive with it, because if we go into this recession and you're trying to find a job, if you're known and the other people aren't, you're going to get the job. It's just that simple, right? If you're trying to sell something online and people don't know you, it's not going to work. It's not. If you've got a small business, even if you have a big business, more doors are going to open. More calls are going to be turned. More opportunities are going to come your way. It's just common sense, right? Please, if you've already known, dust it off. Rethink it. Look at it again. If you haven't read it, I don't care. If there's somebody else that you trust, with this process more than me, just work on your personal brand right now. The last thing I want to leave you with, and then I'll turn to your comments and questions, is I wrote a blog post today about writing your personal story, right? I wrote a blog post called It's Your War. It's Your Story. We are in this amazing time of history. We are living in a war. We are living in a moment of history that will be talked about forever. We're in the middle of it. And these are the stories we're going to be telling our friends, our families, our children, our grandchildren for as long as we live. What's your story going to be? What are you going to be remembered for? Is it going to be for how you show up in a way that's brave and generous, compassionate? Are you showing resolve? Like my new friends at this dental surgery clinic who were so compassionate and friendly. Humor goes a long way right now. And if you think about the stories we tell about ourselves, everybody remembers the funny parts. What are they going to be telling about you? Are you going to be talking about a story of triumph, right? So this is your war, and this is your story. I want you to write that story in your way. Own this narrative and write it every day without compromise. So thank you so much. I'm going to be taking some of your questions, and I'm just going to go through this. Oh my gosh, we've got a lot. So thank you so much. And my goodness, I just thank you for all of your support and all of the nice messages people are sending me through this as well. So an observation from Rod, I'm convinced that there will be long-term changes. We're already seeing it in the UK. Food, definitely. Jonathan Mills Patrick, who has a new book out right now, which I'm in the process of reading. And I'll do a review of this book. And Jonathan, I'm not going to get this right, but maybe Dr. I, you can put a link in the thing here. It's about the ladder or the grind. I'm not sure I have the name absolutely positively right, but I'm loving what I see so far. Jonathan says this will open up people's minds to the fact that much of business can be done virtually. We will see less travel. I think that's true. Vicki O'Neill, my dear friend from Ohio, this has forced businesses to think differently and do differently. It's pushed people into a new realm they either didn't know or they didn't even know that they could do these things, right? Ryan Sowers, I think handshakes may go away. That's an interesting observation, right? Let's see. I'm trying to find a true question here. Rod says, I spoke for the very senior director of corporate insurance today. He's never used Zoom until yesterday. He learned it from his wife. And Rod says he's not going to be traveling like he used to when this is over. So let's try to find some questions. My friend Gary Stockton, what a generous friend Gary has been over the years. I would like brainstorming meetings to be more interactive. Are there ways to get everyone on a WebEx to be more engaged? I was thinking about a living document, but not sure if WebEx allows that. Hey, here's something I learned yesterday. Don't know about WebEx. Zoom has rolled out a functionality where in the same call, you can put people into separate rooms. I think this is a very interesting idea. I personally am not a fan of stagnant documents. I don't have any research on this. I'm only speaking from personal experience, Gary, and to others. But documents seem to just sort of sit there, right? People they do a lot of work, maybe to establish a document, and then it's not living. what I see more effective is searchable wikis, searchable streams. If you're not familiar with Jive, Jive is a really awesome. It's sort of like an internal communications Facebook sort of environment. Very familiar sort of user interface and ways to curate things. So you might look at that. I mean, I think Zoom, WebEx, they're good for things that are in the moment, but in terms of really curating conversations, you might need something bigger. So I'm going. There are so many wonderful, wonderful comments here. Anita from India. Oh, Anita, so much. Thank you so much. She's talking about how known my book has had a big impact on her, changed completely the way she coaches her clients. And again, I mean, the book it's been overwhelming, really. That book has touched thousands of people. From Ivana, how much stress are you seeing from people who don't work virtually? Honestly, I hesitate to comment on that. I think we're still in the early days. I'm coaching people really almost nonstop. And where I'm seeing the stress right now is from personal disruption. Okay? It's from people worried about their finances. It's people worried about having all your kids at home and dealing with that, especially if you're in a small space. I'm seeing people worried about isolation if they live on their own. Lack of physical connection. I mean, right now, I can't see my parents. I can't do that, physically. I'm trying to do that more often, in a virtual way. I can't see, I can't have contact with my children, my grown children who live nearby, that hurts. So I think right now, the stress that I'm seeing is sort of kind of on the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's food, it's shelter, it's clothing, it's human connection, and how do we work? How do we work through WebEx? That's way up here, right? That's my own experience. Brian Schneider, Mark, if you don't have a brand yet, what's the first step? So what I walk people through in my book known is this. There are 4 steps. It is not overwhelming. It really isn't. You follow these 4 steps. It does take time. It does take work, but it really, really works. I believe this with every fiber in my body because so many people have told me it works. And here's a funny story. And I'll get back to your question, Brian. When I've interviewed 97 people who are known in many different fields all around the world. It took them, on average, about 27 months for their personal brand to really take off. 27 months. After I wrote my book, I had people coming up to me 4 to 5 months after the book came out saying, this has changed everything. Lots of people. So some lady said, I just made $1 million off your book. And I'm thinking, I just made $5 off of you. Thank you. I'll visit Starbucks today because of you. But joking aside, I'm thinking, how in the world did all these smart people I interview, why did it take them so long? And all these people read my book and it's so short. It's impossible. And one said to me, it's not impossible. All those people you interviewed didn't have your book. Right? They floundered. I floundered. It took 2 years to figure out what the heck I was doing. Now there's a process. Absolutely, 100% guarantee. This is a process. Now, the first step, and then, by the way, for a lot of people, what I'm finding, this is the hardest step, is to really explore what you want to be known for, what's going to be relevant. And it's not necessarily your passion, right? It's got to be something that you love. It's got to be aligned with your core competency, but there's got to be enough people out there to really care about it as well. So this is covered early in my book. And by the way, there's 8 exercises you can do to help you and work through these. You don't have to do all of them. Just pick out 3 or 4. You can get focused, right? You can do this. So that's okay. Nazim says, do you see reboot of the concept behind capitalism, or will everything go back to an exaggerated rat race? I'm going to have to sort of interpret what you mean by that. And you're speaking from your experience in Italy, which may be a lot different from my experience here. But I think look, when we get out of this thing, I think if there's any reboot whatsoever, it's going to be capitalism on steroids, right? It's already happening. I mean, we are seeing incredible, creative new business models that I think are going to be inspiring and I'm seeing breathtaking innovation. I mentioned this in one of my blog posts the other day. I think the change that we're in is going to, if there's going to be any reboot of anything right now, we're going to see just breathtaking mashups of how technology is used. If you think about the old days, we're kind of locked into these routines, right? And we would work at home, or maybe we wouldn't, or maybe we would just use Skype because that's our default and that's what we're comfortable with. And what we're seeing is to overcome some of these problems of how do we reimagine our businesses? How do we reinvent our marketing? How do we survive by working at home? We're using these technologies and all of these skills at our disposal in exciting, amazing new ways. So I think we're going to see capitalism unleashed. In fact, I think we're seeing it right now. I mean, it's just amazing. It's so much fun, really, for me to see these new ideas pouring out on the web that are solving people's problems right now and getting around this this damn virus and making life livable in our apartments and in our homes. Last comment here, I think, and we'll shut this down. I went a little over, but I thought it was important to get these messages out to you. And again, if you like this and you shared this, if you like this and got some value out of this, please share this with others so I can help as many people as I can right now. Final comment from Jane Leonard. The process only works. I think she's talking about my book, Known. The process only works if you follow it. I read the book 3 times before I did the exercises. The changes I made were small but impactful. And like I said, this is when you get into it. It's not rocket science. Everything I have in the book Known is pretty darn simple. You don't have to make a big investment in really anything except refocusing your time. So thanks, Jane, for your kind comment. Thanks, everyone, for being here today. Thanks for supporting me. I really appreciate you. And I just emphasize once again that this is your time. This is your war. Write your story. Don't let the story happen to you. Own your narrative. Write your story now. Write it every day without compromise. Thank you, everyone. Doing this on at 10 a.m. on Friday, and we will see you then. Thank you.